Welcome back to Murder with the Missus. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy. And today we're going to tell you about Michael and Natalie Cochran, Part 2.
Don't forget to smash that like button. Check out the description for the links of all of our podcast platforms, Cash App, and Buy Me a Coffee. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends. Welcome back.
Yes.
For Part 2.
Dos. Yes.
Sorry, camera's over here. Part 2. I was over here. Part 2.
That's great. I have to give a special shout out to Diana. We found out that she's been binging the channel. So, hey, Diana.
What up? Yeah, and thank you to everybody who has subscribed.
Yes.
And who has contributed to our podcast. And big thank you to our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by
My Laundry Solutions.
You'll hear more from them later.
Yep.
And oh man, if you haven't seen part 1 on this, go back. We'll wait. I'm just kidding. There's so much in this case that you really need to get the information from the first one and then come to this one.
Yeah. So if you're on this one, you ain't heard the first one.
Go back.
Go back because there's a lot of information on there.
It's wild.
Whole bunch.
I will give a little recap, but the devil's in the details on this one, so you need them all. And we're talking about 38-year-old Michael Cochran, who collapsed in his kitchen on February 6th of 2019. He was transferred to the couch where he stayed for 6 or 7 hours. He lost control of his bodily functions, but his wife refused to take him to the hospital or call 911. His friend ended up taking him that night. Now, when he got there, he had a blood glucose level of 21. Low. He was there for about 3 days before he was transferred to another hospital. 2 days later, he was transferred to hospice, and he would pass away in hospice on February 11th, roughly 5 hours after he got there. His wife would be arrested shortly after and pled guilty to federal charges stemming from a Ponzi scheme. And so the first part was us leading up to his death, and now we pick it back up.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
Those are like really specific dates you picked there.
I know. It's because your birthday was yesterday by the time this airs.
Yeah.
Which was February 6th, and he collapsed on February 6th. So.
Yeah. So if you're watching this on Friday, yesterday was my birthday.
And he had a great day.
I'm hoping I had a great day.
He had a great day.
Hold on. Here.
Yeah, he got a couple of hats for his birthday there.
Yeah.
Don't he look dapper? So he FaceTimes me sometimes during the day, and I just have to let you know that when I answer, he's like this.
I'm sitting there like.
When he wears these hats.
She doesn't look at me right away, so I'm sitting there real quiet until she looks at me.
He holds it very well.
I do. But
see what I deal with, people? I need support.
But anyway, no, what I'm talking about, like the dates, it's like, it's a little different.
Yes. Yes.
For me.
It does.
My birthday was
the 6th.
The 6th.
And then the 11th.
It was when my dad died.
Absolutely.
So, but that was in 2007.
Yes.
So it hits a little different for me because that's like specific dates.
Very specific.
So anyway, all right, let's go.
Yes. And it hits different for me too because as someone who's currently recovering from a blood glucose attack.
Yeah.
I know exactly what it can feel like when your levels are just a little low. So I can't even begin to imagine what it was like at 21. You're in a coma. He was in a coma is what happened. Ugh. Now, after he passed, Natalie carried on. On March 14th, she emailed that Bank of America guy again, asking for wiring information because $100,000 was coming in. She also let him know that Michael had passed away. The next day, she emailed him again, saying she was having trouble logging into her account because Michael had been the one to set it all up. But she couldn't access her account because she didn't have an account.
Nada.
She had checks.
I don't know how.
Me neither. She was writing them hot checks. But because those checks were coming back and bouncing all over town, her account was flagged. Like what she had that wasn't finalized yet, they flagged it already because she's out doing the most. Her lawyers did ask him about Michael's involvement in the account because his email address was included on some of the chains that were sent back and forth between him and Natalie.
CC'd in them.
He was CC'd, yes.
Okay.
And he did say that he talked to a man one time on the phone saying that he was Michael. And that was it. Every other time he dealt directly with Natalie. So
she had to know that she was, going to get caught at some point.
At some point. You can't do all this without realizing that someday. But maybe she thought it was all going to work itself out.
So basically, I mean, if you guys haven't watched part 1, go back and watch it because there's a whole lot of information. Basically, right now they're going through the court and everything, and they're trying to run his name through the mud.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that he was completely innocent.
It's his level of involvement that they're trying to figure out.
It's the level of involvement. Now, I'm not, but I'm not saying that he's, I mean.
Sweet baby angel.
No, I mean, there had to have been a level of, you had to know something a little bit.
And we do know that around August, he started telling people, don't deal with Natalie anymore, deal with me, because he was realizing that things were not on the up and up.
Now, the information given and everything too is that he was actually finding legit contracts.
Right.
Now, whether she was rewriting these contracts to make them out to be more is another thing.
We'll get into that.
And that's what I'm thinking was happening.
Is that what you think?
I do.
Okay. Now, the cops did talk to her several times after Michael passed. In her interview in April 8th of 2019, she said that about 10 a.m., she heard a thud from the kitchen. Michael was on the floor, and a bottle of enclopaphene.
Yep.
Yeah. Enclopaphene citrate was on the counter. Now, that's a medication that raises testosterone levels in men.
See, I told you about the testosterone.
You did. In her interview on May 7th, she said Michael was doing the best he had done in his life. They sat together in the living room for about an hour. Michael got up and went into the kitchen, threw up in the sink, passed out, and hit his head on the granite countertop. Now, in this version of events, the enclopaphene was in a cabinet. So he allegedly had this cabinet. It was a secret cabinet that he kept all of his special supplements in. She was saying they were steroids from Mexico. And then on May 8th, she said that they went separate ways that morning, which lines up with them texting each other. And they know he went to Starbucks and got them both a coffee. So this one kind of made sense. She came home and he was sleeping on the couch for about 45 minutes to an hour when he got up and went into the kitchen where he collapsed. This interview is when she said that he had been using insulin as part of his weightlifting routine, injecting himself in different areas of the body, including his back.
I don't understand why anybody would inject themselves, one with insulin, but in their back?
In their back. I need to see where it's going. Like, if I'm injecting something into my body, I want to see that it's going into the right spot. You can't just like jab yourself wherever. And why would your back be your option? What's the point?
Because, I mean, I don't know. That's very dangerous anyway, inject insulin.
Right.
Especially when you don't need it.
Yes. But this is apparently very common in bodybuilding.
Well, that's dumb.
I was actually talking to somebody about this case the other day, and she let me know that, yes, this is a thing. This is what they do. And she could break it all down for you. And she's not even a doctor. She just knows.
That's stupid.
It's so, I don't know. She just knows things. But what do I know? I don't know.
I don't know. That's ridiculous.
Yes. So either way.
Do it the natural way.
Do it the natural way. And if you can't get there, you're not supposed to be there.
Work hard. Earn it.
Earn it.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing. That's how it was being explained to me, is if they regulate their blood sugar with insulin, then it keeps them from gaining fat. Like it forces your body to break down certain parts that it doesn't normally do, and it helps you get it more in shape. It's just a whole thing. She's probably yelling at her screen right now, listening to this. But so we know Natalie's still working on the contracts. She is still taking on investors, and she is still taking out loans, even after Michael's death. On June 25th, an investigator from the West Virginia State Police and someone from the U.S. Attorney's Office came to Donna and Ed's door. Now that's Michael's mom and stepdad. They let them know about the scheme that's been going on and that they think Natalie had something to do with Michael's death. Ironically, Donna and Ed were supposed to sign a contract that day with Natalie. She owed them $290,000, their entire life savings. And Natalie had told them that TSG and TMS, the two businesses that they owned, was going to pay them $9,000 a week to hit that total of $290,000. And then the profit of $1.1 million that she had promised them was going to be paid by Natalie herself for their elder care to pay their mortgage, get new cars, lawnmowers, all kinds of things. And we have talked about a lot of things that came out in these investigations. As we mentioned earlier, the defense is blaming Michael for everything. Her lawyer said, don't you think a reasonable person would question where they got the property unless they knew where it came from? So here they are blaming Michael. But here we are after his death with Natalie still promising people millions of dollars. So it's really not making any sense. So it really threw Donna and Ed for a loop because they didn't know that all this was going on, and they're still getting shit from Natalie saying like, do you want to invest in this? And they're like, we have no more money. You've taken all of our money. It's over. It's just really sad. So the defense was pushing that really hard, that Michael knew. Michael was working on contracts all the time. Michael was spending money. They brought up checks that Michael had signed to pay workers who were remodeling one of the houses that they'd bought. He was on the bank accounts. But if he thought it was a legitimate business, then wouldn't he think he was spending the profits from that business?
Yeah.
Not necessarily that he's spending investor funds or that there is no actual profit from the business. It just points that he thinks it was a legitimate business. And the investigators for the federal crimes say that the investigation led them to believe that Michael thought this was legit. Like, even the guy on the stand is like, everything I've seen shows that Natalie's doing all the dirty.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like he thought it was legit.
That's what I'm getting out of it. And Natalie didn't speak at the state trial. She did at federal. So there's some information to get from there. They talk about Michael taking steroids and acting differently starting in about 2017 into 2018. She says he stopped taking his anti-seizure meds. But remember, Michael had told everybody that Natalie sets his pills and stuff up for him. She handled all of that. So why not go ahead and slip them in there when you're doing his supplements every morning? Like, make him take them. It's not like he's going to sit there. If he's taking handfuls at a time, he's not going to pay attention to each individual pill that he's taking. Her statement in federal trial was that Michael's steroid use made him physically and mentally abusive, that he was loving one minute and taking a sledgehammer to the furniture the next, that he had cut Natalie off from Natalie and the kids off from friends and family. So he's controlling.
What sound like she had plenty of access to family and friends.
That's true.
To get that money.
Yeah, she had plenty of access for that.
And, I mean, in part one, it sounds more like she was the one cutting him off from family.
Right.
Because she was preventing the family from coming in and seeing him. She was preventing the family to come over whenever he was in college and stuff because her family was there.
Yep.
I mean,
it seems like a pattern for years and years because they were married 19 years or so when he died. So they're like us. They've been together since high school. And everyone said that they gave Natalie money. And even if they gave it to Michael, it doesn't mean that he knew what Natalie did with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if they gave him $50,000, he would have gave it to her to put in the bank, or he would have put it in the bank. And then he would have thought that it was going for contracts or bids or whatever they were doing. And even ironically, all the irony in here too. Now she is estranged from her family. Only her parents, her sister, and the kids are who talk to her right now. Everyone else in her family is completely done with her. Her brother even testified against her in the federal case because he was a victim of what she did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But her lawyer there was like, what did Natalie really get out of this? She went out to dinner with her family a bunch. I think they took one vacation. She had a modest amount of jewelry. A pair of $14,000 earrings is modest. But Natalie said those earrings were an apology for Michael after he tried to run her over with his truck.
That's a car.
That is a car.
I mean,
she's walking around with it on her ears.
That's a decent, nice car. I mean, for $14,000.
I bet Donna would like some $14,000 earrings.
Yeah.
Her defense also pushed a lot that Michael was just a ticking time bomb of health issues. That in his 2 visits to the hospital in October and November, he had a lot. He had all that stuff going on. But on the flip side of that, no one testified that they had ever seen him actually have a seizure. That was only Natalie. Prosecution would ask if they ever saw Michael had a seizure when people were on the stand, and they're like, no. they're like, well, then how'd you know Michael had seizures? And they're like, oh, because Natalie said he did. So is she making up his health problems?
Yeah.
Right? And now they're like, oh, well, he was so sick. He was knocking on death's door the whole time. Everybody else is like, he was healthy.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, she was sick, and then all of a sudden now he's the one sick, remember? And
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, like we mentioned in the first part, outside of his son.
That's what I was saying. She was going to the doctor and saying that she had all these symptoms to get all this meds
that he was allergic to.
That he's allergic to, and then giving it to him. Come and find out she wasn't even sick.
That's the thing too. They never asked anybody when they were on the stand how Natalie was acting that day.
Yeah.
While Michael was sick. Remember, Natalie had been to the doctor the last 2 days in a row saying she had the flu. She was throwing up. She had 103 fever. And the doctor's like, you're fine.
Yeah.
But nobody ever, if I was prosecution, I would have been like, how was Natalie that day? Did she seem sick? Was she throwing up? Did anybody else get the flu from being around her? Because I guarantee you she was not sick.
And, you know, I don't know. I mean, maybe it is a thing, but I mean, how many people ask for specifically, I want meds that you inject?
Right. Well, she is a pharmacist, and she would do training on how to inject yourself, like for diabetics. And she was literally trained in that, and she would train other people to do it. So she's like, I want something that's going to work quick, but you can't get that kind of stuff over the counter. So she would have to go to one of her physician friends or the neighbor that had a diabetic son.
Well, I drag all of them in.
Everybody's coming in. Well, the PA testified against Natalie.
Yeah.
The friend whose son has diabetes testified against Natalie. Everybody was against Natalie. And then, like I said, outside of his son and Natalie's sister saying that they saw him inject something on his own once, no one else had seen him do it. And no one had ever heard him talk about taking steroids, or not even his closest friends like Chris. Nobody.
Well, I mean, you know, and everything's coming from Natalie, though.
Everything's coming from Natalie.
I guarantee he was just taking like testosterone.
He had testosterone.
I mean, that's...
Yeah. So the big problem in this trial was hard evidence. The prosecution is pushing that Natalie injected Michael with that insulin that she got from the neighbor that morning, and that's what killed him. But they didn't do the autopsy on him until 7 months after he died.
Yeah.
There was talk that he was in a crypt and not actually buried. So while they refer to him as being exhumed, it could have just been them taking him out of the crypt. But either way, he had already started partially decomposing. So they couldn't really find out if he had insulin in his system or anything else in his system. They could only go off what tests they ran at the hospital, and they dropped the ball.
Well, yeah.
Because if you have a healthy 38-year-old bodybuilder come in and his blood glucose is 21, you should start running a battery of tests. And then, we'll get into that in a minute. There's more. There should have been other tests ran too, but there wasn't. The next autopsy they did, remember I told you they charged her and then they dismissed the charges, but then they recharged her with his murder in 2023. It's because that's when they did that second autopsy. Now that was 4 years later. So you're getting even less information than you got from that first one. Yeah. So like I said, they look at his medical records. They know the blood glucose was 21 and he was not diabetic. So it would be very odd for it to be that low, leading to the belief that someone or something would have had to done something to bring it down to that level.
Yep.
Other things can cause that. So an endocrinologist testified that he did not have end-stage liver or kidney failure. He was not suffering from malnourishment. He did not have adrenal gland issues. Like, she went through a whole list of things that could have caused the low blood glucose levels, but they were all ruled out. So there should have been, like I said, further testing to see why. Now, he also had benzodiazepine in his urine, so benzos, and he is allergic to benzos.
And that's Xanax.
That is Xanax. What did she pick up on the 4th from the pharmacy? I'm at the pharmacy. You need me to get you anything? She was picking up her Xanax. So if he's allergic to it, well, why is it in his system?
Yeah, there was another one that he was allergic to.
Yes, the promethazine.
Yeah.
Promethazine. Listen, I'm going to butcher all these, so welcome. But either way, the hospital should have ran more tests to see what the level of benzos was in his system, or if there was anything else in his system. The defense points out that his potassium was low and that he had a 17,000 white blood cell count, which is high. I mean, hell, 11,000 is high, and he was at 17. And they did give him 1 dose of antibiotics for that. So then there goes the defense on that. Well, he was sick. They had to give him antibiotics. Well, it's probably because your client dosed him up with a bunch of shit.
Yep.
They also had a CT scan from the hospital showing no head injury. But if you'll remember, one of Natalie's stories that she gave was that he hit his head on the counter in the kitchen when he had a seizure and passed out. I believe her sister or someone even pointed out a divot in the counter to show how hard he hit it. If you're going to dent a granite countertop.
I was about to say, what kind of countertop was that?
Granite. You're going to have some head trauma.
I don't think you're going to dent.
No. And still not have any visible signs.
I don't think you're going to dent granite. You might chip it away.
Yes.
But
they called it a divot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No.
Now, the insulin that Natalie had borrowed from the neighbor was Humalog, which is a fast-acting insulin. So it takes effect about 15 minutes after it is injected, and then it's out of your system in about 4 to 6 hours or so. Everybody's different, so depending on how much you give yourself, et cetera, but it should be gone no more than 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Since he got to the hospital around 8 hours after he collapsed, why would his glucose level still be so low? So if she did inject him, wouldn't it have been out of their system by then?
Well, I mean, she had 8 hours.
Yeah. With people everywhere, though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there wasn't people there the whole time.
Not the entire time.
Yeah.
But there towards the end, yes, there was people there the whole time.
At the end.
It is implied that she injected him more than once.
Yeah.
Over that time frame, possibly even on the way to the hospital. Because remember, Chris put him in the truck and was like, let's go.
And
he drove and she was in the back with Michael. Yeah. Okay. Defense points out that the next day, his blood glucose dipped once again, indicating that this was an internal problem with his body. It's also implied that Natalie let no one else come to the hospital and see him at that time. Remember, she said only one person was allowed to be with him, and that person was her. Dr. Uribe, the person that did the second autopsy, said these are all red flags, and that there's a big difference between insulin that you produce naturally and what is introduced into your system. Belief is that he had been injected with insulin, so she changed the cause of death to homicide.
Did the cops find the insulin bottle?
They did. Now, remember, because they didn't even come look at her house. So he died in February.
Yeah.
And they didn't even come and do a search warrant on her house until June. And she still had it. So they're like, duh, why you still got it here? Anyways, they ended up with 3 vials of medicine, actually. So they had the Humalog, which was the insulin. They had a female fertility drug. And they had the vial that came from his parents' house. Natalie had brought it to them for some reason. And they kept it. And that bottle was labeled enclopamine citrate. Remember? In one version of her story, it was on the counter when Michael collapsed. And then in another version of her story, that medicine was in the cabinet.
Yeah.
So depending on which story you follow, you know that it was there at the house. So I don't know why she took it to his parents. But when they tested what was in the bottle, it was not enclopamine citrate. It was glycerol and letrozole, which I Googled letrozole. It says that it's used to treat breast cancer. Why is that in the bottle? For the testosterone.
Yeah.
Well, how'd you switch that out? Why'd you switch that out? I'm so confused.
Yeah.
Either way, it doesn't cause low blood sugar. So it doesn't even matter. But why?
What does it do?
What does which one do? The one that was in it or what was supposed to be in it?
The one that was in it.
So the one that was in it is a breast cancer treatment. It's like a steroid.
So what would that do to a male?
It just, the way it was described was it keeps male hormones from turning female. It's testosterone based, I'm guessing. I don't know.
Okay.
But either way, it doesn't cause low blood sugar and it doesn't cause any of the symptoms that he had.
If you guys know what it is, let us know in the comments.
Let me know. I'm not a doctor or a pharmacist.
Yeah, we don't know that part. I don't want to say something wrong.
And I don't have it right in front of me. I looked it up when I wrote it.
Get blamed for not telling the story right.
We're giving false information. I just forgot what it said. It's something about the hormones or it's like a steroid. I don't know.
I got you.
But either way, like I said, it doesn't cause any of the symptoms he had, and it would not cause his blood sugar to go down.
Okay.
The Humalog bottle, though, did have a puncture mark on the stopper. Now, the prosecution said that this is because Natalie used it to inject Michael with it. But the defense raises the point that the FBI would have had to test the contents of that bottle somehow, and the seal hadn't been broken. So they would have caused the puncture mark when they tested it.
Yeah, it could be.
Could be. So then the question becomes, how could she inject him without knowing it? That's what the defense runs around. Well, you would know if somebody injected you. And if it takes 15 minutes to work, he would have had time to call for help if she randomly stuck him with a needle. You know what I mean?
Plus, them balls comes in with, them things are, I don't know how, they're all different sizes, but they have so many ounces, fluid ounces or whatever, however they measure them.
Right.
And it'd already be some gone.
Well, it's hard to tell. Yeah, you would think that. So that you can look at the pictures from when they actually took the medicine, but by now, there's no medicine in these bottles. It's evaporated. It's gone. It's all gone. So they're looking at the pictures from when they got it, and they're saying that it's hard to tell if there's a bubble at the top of the bottle or if there's some gone, or this is the problem with the evidence that they have, is it's not exactly as clear cut as you would want it to be. But in my thinking, if she told him that she was picking up meds for him at the doctor that morning, and she also had that PA Stephanie call her in a prescription for injectable corticosteroids a couple of days before this, would it be out of the realm of possibility that she told him she was giving him a shot at the steroid and that he believed her? You know what I mean?
Oh, I'd believe it.
She'd be like, oh, the doctor said to give you this shot, but it wasn't that steroid. It was that insulin.
I'd 100% believe that.
So he couldn't call for help in the 15 minutes he had before it took effect because he didn't know anything was wrong.
Yeah.
Till it was too late. Now, that bottle of the corticosteroid that Stephanie called in for her, there was no puncture mark on it, so it had not been used. Then why'd you get it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, Natalie had also told different stories about that insulin. The police had showed her a picture of some stuff that was taken from her house, and she pointed out that insulin on the picture and said that she kept it there because the Davis's son next door was a diabetic, and Natalie was listed as a backup at the school in case they couldn't get a hold of the parents and he was having some kind of sugar issue. She was okayed to go and take him that medicine. Now, why would she lie about that if it was true?
I mean, she probably would.
Why would she lie? Unless she just maybe didn't want to get in trouble for having meds that weren't prescribed to her.
Exactly.
But
or maybe she thought she would get away with, killing Michael.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what she thought, because even the Davises on the stand were like, yeah, she was okay to go check on him at the school, but we never kept insulin at her house.
Yeah.
Like, that's not okay. But anyways.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break from a word from our sponsor. Hang out with us just for a minute. We'll be right back with the remaining of part 2.
Do you or someone you know live in an apartment community? Are you balling on a budget? Then this ad is for you.
Some apartments don't have a washer and dryer included in the lease. If you want that life, then contact My Laundry Solutions.
They serve Tulsa, Oklahoma, Springfield, Joplin, and Kansas City, Missouri, Sherman, Dallas, Houston, and Lubbock, Texas. Their newest location is in Fort Worth, with more locations opening in Texas in 2025 and 2026. No credit check, free service, professional installation, and your account is available online, all for about $1 a day. Go to your leasing office, go to mylaundrysolutions.com, or call 800-535-4411.
Stop wasting that hard-earned money at the laundromat and give My Laundry Solutions a call today.
Yeah, call them.
Give them a call. Great people, great company.
Yes. Now, while we were on break, I look up letrozole, and it says that it is used to lower estrogen levels and treat breast cancer in postmenopausal women. So
put on there, what does it do to men?
Oh, letrozole in men. Please hold.
We're getting there. Hang on.
It says it can be administered to morbidly obese men to improve testosterone levels.
Okay.
He was not morbidly obese, though. He was a bodybuilder.
All right. So there you go.
So anyways, we've solved that mystery of what that is. Let me know if you want me to Google anything else for you guys. I'm more than willing to do it. Now, she also ends up saying that Michael used insulin as part of his weightlifting routine. Remember?
Yep.
Defense brings up that Mr. Universe actually died because of using insulin in this way.
That's such a dumb way.
But if that's the case, why didn't she tell the hospital staff that he could have injected himself with insulin? I mean, she's a pharmacist. She knows. His blood glucose level is at 21. If she knows that he had insulin and took it himself, why not tell them? Why not tell the cops? Why not tell anybody? She told nobody. Of course, you'd also think that someone would call 911 if your husband had all those health problems and then he suddenly threw up, had a seizure, hit his head on the counter so hard he put a dent in it and then was unconscious. But that's just me.
She said she didn't want him to get mad, though.
Yeah. And I love you, but if you're unconscious, it's now my call. You don't want to go to the hospital? Well, then stop me from taking you then.
Wake up.
You can't because you're unconscious. And we can fight about it later when you live through it. How about that? But no. Anyways, there's a lot of questions for her side. Like, if she was trying to kill him, why'd she let all those people in the house? Why did she borrow the murder weapon from the neighbor?
Witnesses.
Exactly.
Good Lord.
And then they was like, why did she borrow the murder weapon from the neighbor? That'd be like going to the neighbor and be like, can I borrow your gun? And then you shoot somebody. And they're like, no, that's not how that works. Why didn't she have him cremated so that there would be no possible way to detect something in his system?
That's just because she's dumb.
Yes. And like we said, she probably let all those people in the house to show that she was actively caring for him. Hey, look, I'm taking his vitals all the time, except I don't have a thermometer, but I have a pulse ox meter. Explain that. And they were mostly at normal levels. And maybe she didn't call 911 or get him to the hospital because she knew she needed 4 to 6 hours for the insulin to get out of his system. But that would only work if she didn't go back and inject him again. And there are two things that were problematic in this whole case. The cancer diagnosis only came from Natalie. There was no documentation provided showing that she had been diagnosed with it. She never had chemo. She never had radiation. Her family doctor did say that she suspected she might have it because of some symptoms she was experiencing, but they never tested for it.
She could have just showed medical records.
Exactly. If you have it, if you were diagnosed with a stage 3 cancer and you're that sick and you're being treated for it.
So she's like a hypochondriac.
Except when it comes to her husband.
Yeah.
She could care less about him, but she was at the doctor at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she had
This is kind of like a, well, never mind, like a Gypsy Rose type thing. Where the mom was like, oh, no, she's this, she's that.
She's got all these sicknesses. Yeah.
Everything. And these doctors are just giving her the meds, giving her this, giving her that. I mean.
Munchausen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Munchausen by proxy.
Even the judge in the federal case said that she faked a cancer diagnosis to help her scheme. And people would want to meet. Like I said, she would want to meet and be like, why aren't we getting a return on our investment? And she'd be like, oh, the radiation made me tired. The chemo made me sick. Remember, we talked about that before. So while they push that the prosecution can't prove she didn't have it, she can't prove that she did. And like I said, if she had stage 3 cancer and was never treated for it, I doubt she'd be sitting there in the court looking so healthy 5 years later. And there's also the contracts. The investigator in the federal case testified that there were no contracts awarded to either of the businesses, federal or state contracts. All the money that came in and was presented as profit was actually those investors' funds. There were no millions of dollars coming in from the government ever. She faked paperwork, like you said, like making those contracts, faking that she put in a bid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she faked it all. She faked emails.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I already knew she was faking all that stuff.
Yes, but they proved it. They were like, this is all fake.
Good.
Whatever she needed to do to make the business seem legitimate, she did it, even in correspondence with Michael. So they're sitting here looking at all the ways that she's talking to other people and talking to Michael, and she's telling him the same shit that she's telling the other people. So they're like, we legitimately don't think that he was involved in the scheme. He thought this was real. After he passed away, she took on more investors, like I said. She raised money for those scholarships that never paid out. The defense on that was that the government seized her assets around June of 2019, so she couldn't have paid any of that scholarship money like she had promised. So now it's also the government's fault that those kids didn't get to go to college. Well, why was the government involved, Natalie?
No, it's her fault. Because you're making up fake shit.
All the fake shit. And they also found in their investigation that she had paperwork showing that she was attempting to sell off Michael's interest in the businesses, promising 49% of the companies, a fleet of vehicles, the airplane, the hangar, all the things, for the low, low price of $4.9 million. And the buyer had already made a deposit of $50,000 that was wired to Natalie the day before the feds executed that search warrant.
She's just all about that money.
All about that money. But the big thing on her defense, remember, is that she had very minimal involvement in the business. And there's one more thing I want to mention. See, the prosecutors had a weak case. Remember, we've talked about that. They didn't have a lot of hard evidence. They said that in their opening statement to the jury. Like, listen, you're going to hear a lot of circumstantial stuff, but it adds up. They had a lot of proof of lies, texts, friends' testimonies, her activities at the time, things that show how they got here. And a lot of the hard-hitting stuff came in the last couple of days. I watched this thing and I'm like, man, the state better pick it up. It's not looking good. And then in them last couple of days, man, they started pulling out those texts. They started pulling out all the things. When Lieutenant Bledsoe was on the stand, he was the one who investigated the financial crimes. They asked him if he ever interviewed Thomas Treadway. He said he would have loved to, but he never got to. Thomas refused to talk to them. So they put Thomas on the stand. He did graphics design for the Cochrans for their business and for some of the contracts. His wife also did some notary work for them. And there had been some talk about Michael being a little confused before he passed away. Remember, we said that the defense was saying he had an altered mental state. So what they were saying was that he was not able to find his truck in a parking lot when he allegedly didn't even drive to that store. So he had rode with somebody else. Thomas talks about Michael wanting Panera for lunch really bad one day. But when they were inside, he suddenly remembered that he hated Panera with an unbridled passion. He pointed out that Thomas was wearing a hat once, like that was out of the norm, but Thomas said he always wore a hat. So there's little things like that where they were saying his mind wasn't functioning right. The prosecution pulled out what they called a fraudulent document on Bank of America letterhead. They don't go into what is on the document, but they infer that someone with graphic design knowledge would have had to make this letterhead, right?
Oh, hell. I could go and print something out right now.
Yeah, they were stretching on that one. I was like, I mean, anybody can do that.
Yeah.
You got a color printer? Done.
Good night.
Done. But they did ask him why he didn't want to talk to the feds. And he said that he Googled the agents that wanted to talk to him, and he saw an article from the Charleston Gazette saying that those particular people were involved in witness tampering. So he didn't want anything to do with them. They were like, oh, okay, so you get all your information from the Charleston Gazette? And people giggled, and he was like, no. But here's why they really wanted to talk to Thomas. Natalie had sent someone a text the day that Michael collapsed saying Thomas thinks he's getting worse. So he was there that day. Thomas texted Natalie that she needed to make a timeline. So when you do go get a lawyer, you'll be ahead of the game. Why would you need a lawyer?
Exactly.
And in another text, you were checking his vitals and blood sugar after I came in. They weren't elevated. So they were pointing this out like he was coaching her. Like, this is what you need to say. This is how you need to say it happened. And then after Michael died, Natalie texted him to see if he could crack into Michael's phone. So maybe he was on the bad end of the deal. You know what I mean? Maybe he was helping out with the scheme or something. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another thing to mention is that somehow, while he was unconscious, Michael's phone texted someone at 1:39 p.m. saying he would be available that weekend in what they believe was a firearms deal. Now that raised two questions. The obvious, how could he send that text? Because she was texting people at noon that he was passed out on the kitchen floor.
Yeah.
So he couldn't have sent that text. But also, he was involved in the firearms deals. So then they're like, oh, well, if there were no real contracts, how could he not notice? To fulfill a contract for guns, you would have to get a large quantity of guns, right? You would think that he would notice that they didn't have a bunch of guns in the garage. So there's still the question of how much of the business he was aware of.
Maybe they were using it, the don't ask, don't tell policy.
Maybe she handled. They were saying it was really hard to believe that all he did was find the contracts and then made Natalie do everything else. But Natalie didn't do anything else except fake emails and print letterheads.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's a lot involved. We'll move along. They did offer Natalie a plea deal. The first option was to start her sentence from September 30th of 2019 when she went on house arrest, and she would be eligible for parole in 15 years. The second option was plead to second-degree murder, and it would be 10 years, but the time would start in May of 2021 when she actually went to federal prison. She said no thank you. She didn't want any of that. Now, West Virginia court is weird. The jury basically does everything. Just the other day, January 29th of 2025, she was found guilty by unanimous decision for murdering her husband, Michael. We found her guilty like in second paragraph of her first one.
Yeah.
And then they start the mercy phase. It's still like the trial where they call people to the stand. There's cross-examinations, objections, just like a trial. But they can talk about more things that they couldn't in the actual trial. And this was to determine if she would get mercy and be eligible for parole in 15 years, or if she would just get life. They deliberated for about an hour and 20 minutes or so before they said she gets no mercy.
No mercy.
Nope. No
None.
mercy. Not for her. In closing, the prosecution said something that made sense, but also offended Natalie based on her facial expressions. I was watching her face closely. They said that there was a phrase that they had been throwing around on the prosecution's team, that Natalie Cochran involves everyone, but includes no one, which is 100% accurate. And most people are on the same page as the jury, but some do say that Michael knew more than he let on. As we mentioned, her kids are standing by her. Her parents are standing by her and her sister Penny, but everyone else that was in her life has washed their hands of her. They didn't even let her parents be listed as victims in the federal case for the Ponzi scheme. So if she was ever to start paying people back, they wouldn't be a part of it. And the kids don't talk to Michael's parents. Natalie relinquished her rights to her parents for the kids, so they took over and moved in with Natalie and the kids when this first started. Nicole stopped responding to texts to Donna and Ed in June of 2019, and Mac last responded to a text from Donna and Ed in August saying, "Don't text me anymore. I'm going to block you. You never loved us. We know that now." And nobody knows where that came from, but it's sad. Very sad.
Well, that family is tore apart.
Yeah, everybody is torn apart.
Yep.
Like a lot of people were like, we didn't even go to the trial because we didn't know what side to sit on, because we don't want to hurt the people that are defending her, but we also do not support that she's innocent. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what do we do? And Donna and Ed on the stand at the mercy phase, oof, they were powerful, but they were very angry at the same time. So they kind of got into it with defense a little bit, but they were hurt. And that's where I have a problem with them being able to cross-examine people in this phase. Like after Ed talked and said his piece, the defense was like, "Isn't it true that you and Michael didn't get along for years?" It's like, why? Which I guess would be something you might want to keep in mind. But even if it's true, what does it matter? He had been in Michael's life since he was 8. He loved him. If they had times where they couldn't, get along or they butted heads, okay. Does that mean either of them deserve to die? Or, I don't understand what that proves. What does that do? Are they discrediting that person? They're like, "Oh, you didn't even know him. Y'all didn't even talk." Get out of my face.
Yeah.
And does that in any way change the fact that Natalie is on trial for murder? No. There's another part that bothered me where Nicole said Michael was always working on contracts. When he started going to the hospital at the end of 2018, he started having headaches, dizziness. He was agitated all the time. He sounds stressed, like someone who just found out things weren't what they seemed to be. Or on the other side of the coin, stressed because it's all coming out now, if he was involved. But Mac testified about who wore the pants in the family, and that he was chilling in bed one time with Natalie and Michael one night, and Natalie was reading a book and Michael was looking for contracts. He said he helped Michael find a contract for 50 cals. And that made me remember that from that text chain toward the end there, Natalie had texted him about a 50 cal contract that was going to make him $134 million. Now, maybe they were two different contracts, but that did stick out to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Michael already said that he found the contracts.
Right.
That was his main, that was his main job.
His main job in the company, yes. And that was never in dispute. It's just after that, what? then what?
Yeah.
He found contracts. He worked out discounts with local gun dealers. He did things like that. And there's proof of that. He had one dealer that was giving him a 75% off discount because they were promising to buy in large quantities. But one of the things being thrown around is that the kids had been influenced by Natalie and her parents. And this could point to that. That was where I was going. That Natalie was like, remember when you helped Dad find those contracts? Do you remember that? He's like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember. Because they were 11 and 13 when he died. They're very impressionable. And they also made the choice very quickly after losing their dad that they didn't want anything to do with his side of the family anymore. And I'm not saying that's the case, but I can see that it's possible.
Do you remember when you helped Dad find those contracts on the government site?
On that government website?
Oh,
exactly.
yeah. I totally remember that.
Yeah, we were laying in bed, right? Yeah, that's the time. So Dawn is very convinced that these kids have been manipulated.
Wow.
And it hurts her. Like, she's very upset about it, very angry, and I don't blame her. But the jury had enough to believe that Natalie was the main person in the business and that she was stealing money from people, that Michael was finding out, that he was getting more involved, and she had to do something because he was going to find out the full extent of what had been going on. And then it's also not lost on everybody that he started getting really sick after he found out that things were going downhill. And that possibly, maybe, when he told someone that he felt like he was being poisoned, that maybe that wasn't so far-fetched.
No.
Yeah.
No, not so far-fetched at all.
And that's what a lot of people believe, that she had been poisoning him for months.
So where did they land on as far as time?
No mercy. She got life.
She got life, okay.
Yeah, no mercy. That means she does not get eligibility for parole.
So she got life, plus she got whatever she got before, right?
She's currently serving 11 years and 3 months, I believe it is, in federal. And then she'll go to state, which maybe. I wouldn't see them taking her out of federal and putting her in state to do her time and then taking her back to federal. But you never know how things work. West Virginia's weird.
Either way, she gone.
She gone. Yes, and she was not a happy camper about that. And that's where we're at on this one.
Yep,
that just ended literally a couple days ago.
Yep.
And if you like the content that we do and you want to support the channel, we do have Cash App. You have to use the email address, dna.truecrime@gmail.com.
We also have the Buy Me a Coffee.
I love that.
And, it's buymeacoffee.com/MWTM.
Yep. Links are in the descriptions. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, tell your friends. You want to know when these new episodes drop, right?
Yeah. And thanks to everybody who has subscribed, and thanks to everybody who comments and
comment on this one. I need to know. This one's like a Sarah Boone situation for me.
Absolutely.
I was involved.
Yep. But yeah, keep them coming.
Yep.
And if you guys have a case that you guys want us to look into,
email us.
Message us.
Yep.
We will be happy to do it. Till next time.
Bye.